Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So could we be seeing a progressive renaissance in Wisconsin? You know, the state that gave us Robert La Follette, who served as governor and as senator, and really oversaw some major progressive reforms during his time. Also gave us Scott Walker. So the other side of that coin. But could we be seeing a rebirth of the New Deal type era? Could we be doing things for people again? I sure hope so. And I look at this American Rescue Plan, good start, but also there's a piece of legislation banging around the state house in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Economic Justice Bill of Rights, that I think is really important. And here to share some thoughts on their piece of legislation, I've asked Kristina Shelton to come talk with us. She's a state representative in the 90th Assembly District there. Also, Francesca Hong, she represents the folks of the 76th District of Wisconsin. Ladies, thanks for taking time for me.
Thank you so much for having us, Rick.
Let's start with you first, Kristina. How'd this come about? How'd this idea of an economic bill of rights for the folks in Wisconsin come about?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having us on tonight. It's so great to be able to talk about this important project. And I also just want to say thank you to my colleague, Francesca Hong, for being my partner on this resolution and having this vision with me. Francesca and her team have become good friends of mine, and it's fantastic to be able to do good work with people that have your back. Before Fran and I were even sworn in on our first day to serve in the Wisconsin State Legislature, we were hard at work in November and in December planning and talking and really casting a vision and really trying to determine what our priorities were going to be when we hit the ground running in January. And, when we came out of the November election, there were certainly positives and things to feel good about as Democrats. But at the same time, we wanted to be really honest about what it meant to be a Democrat, where the Democratic Party was going, and being able to identify some of the issues that we thought Democrats needed to take into account as we plan for the next, 2 to 5 to 10 years. One of the things that really continued to rise to the top was the inability for Democrats to consistently speak volumes about what they are going to do for working families and working people. We felt that the messaging was inconsistent, and we were concerned that there was inconsistency around values as well. And so, a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, Professor Harvey Kay, who comes out of UWGB, and some other friends of mine, we started kicking around this idea of really leaning into the progressive history of Wisconsin, but also the progressive history of this country that we all love and we're fighting for. And what came out of that work was the Economic Justice Bill of Rights, which we see as really a set of commitments. It's a set of values. It's not just a moral imperative, it's an economic imperative. And we see it basically creating the foundation for our work, hopefully not just over the next 2 years, but moving beyond.
No, I'll tell you, I've been really thrilled what I'm seeing coming out of Democrats here this first month and a half, or almost two of the Biden administration, where we're talking about values and we're talking about how we're going to actually help working people, which is why I think this rescue plan that they're moving forward on is transformational. This is the first time in my life that we're going, hey, we're going to actually help the people at the bottom and not give more tax breaks and more handouts to the wealthy in the hopes that something will fall out of their pockets. So for me, this is a transformational moment. So I want to turn to you, Francesca Hong, and look at this. What is it that brought you to move forward on this Economic Justice Bill of Rights?
I echo a lot of what my colleague Kristina said, that we need consistency in messaging. We need to really re-identify what the Democrats and the folks in the party want to fight for. And I think what we want to fight for are working people. And we've always had this identity, but it hasn't really been conveyed in a clear way. And really, we need we need a resource to be able to convey this to the multiracial, multi-ethnic party that I think we all want to see and be a part of. And so for me, I think with all of the grief, all of the loss, all of the disparities that continue to be exacerbated and that more people are seeing are actually the realities of this country and what this country has been built on, it was important that we take our response to all of these multiple crises was that of opportunity. And everyone in this country, everyone in the state of Wisconsin, every community deserves to have economic opportunity. And so the response to that and in our answer to that really is in this Economic Justice Bill of Rights, something that can really be a cornerstone to help more people see the value of being a Democrat, the value of being identified as and being a part of something that we really want to fight for. I think for a long time now, especially in the past 8 to 10 years, it's been difficult for folks in the party to really kind of go to communities and say, and when people ask them, what are you fighting for? And we should have a direct answer right away that every single Democrat holds, and then be able to use these values to and have them be, the cornerstone of what we need to use to build our society on. And I think we need to have that resource right now as we continue to build a more a multiracial and multi-ethnic and multi-generational party that really embraces a lot of the diversity. And we need to be able to go into the communities with something that is concrete. And I think this Economic Justice Bill of Rights is what we need to go into these communities with.
No, and it's a great line. But I talk to my conservative friends and they tell me, the reason that their Republicans are conservatives is because they want smaller government, they want low taxes, and they want their God, guns, and gays. And that's they've got their points. You ask a Democrat and they're all over the place. So it's your hope, from what I'm gathering, that this is your ability to, this is how we're going to respond. Is that what I'm getting?
Exactly. I think it's about identity building, and we have so many different identities in our country right now. And then I think that they can be from personal to political, social, economic. There are multiple identities that create a person, and there should be multiple identities that create a party and a society. And we're not saying that every single Democrat has to look the same and believe in the same things, but these are things that very few people can argue against.
Right.
And we want to be the party that provides agency to people, and an Economic Justice Bill of Rights is what's going to provide agency for folks.
That is the hope. Kristina, when you walk through this Bill of Rights, this is pretty comprehensive. How do you narrow this down? I guess we should start with, what is in it that you think is important, and why did you put all the things in that you did?
Well, we really started with a question around what does it take to build communities and individuals that have economic security. And, typically when you think about this, you start with, jobs and the economy and labor. And so we knew we wanted to put in there commitments around a living income and livelihood, and of course, unions and collective bargaining. But when you really think about this issue from an intersectional comprehensive lens of, economic justice being the umbrella and sort of what are the institutions that provide that and lift that up, you see, things like childcare and healthcare and public education, a healthy planet, clean water, housing, transportation, criminal justice. These are pillars of rights that we all are entitled to. This isn't merit-based. There isn't a means test for who deserves a house and who doesn't deserve a house. We're coming out and saying, you deserve housing. You deserve, climate-friendly, reliable transportation, that everyone deserves a fair and equitable justice system. And oh, by the way, no matter your background, you deserve life, self-determination, and liberation. And that, everyone should be able to live free of fear. And so it was difficult. We had some tough conversations about how to get it down to 10, because we do believe in a number of rights, but narrowing it to that, the economic pillars, I think helped us to ground that conversation. And it was a challenging conversation. And honestly, it was a great first project to work with my colleague on, we really got to know each other well and to really form a great working team, like I said, I think is going to transform into the next phase, because the hope is that this will then lead to legislation that is grounded in our commitments here. So looking at a Wisconsin, Green New Deal, looking at comprehensive labor reform, tying in, public education and childcare to economic security. So there's a lot we think we can dig into, and we're building a great team to be able to do that.
No, it's important that you have a basis, and this is a good start, and it covers everything, from childcare to healthcare, security in general. But what do you say to the person then, Kristina, who would go, well, how are you going to deliver all this stuff? This is socialism. I get this all the time. How do you respond to that? These are going to be just a bunch of handouts, and this is going to be a socialized program.
Look, I think that, when we think about the big issues that are on our plate right now, climate change and looking at the income discrepancy, millionaires and billionaires making money hand over fist, especially during the COVID crisis, while working people struggle to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. And there are far few in between institutions beyond government that can step in, that can really lead with a people first vision and commitment that is not based on making money and robbing communities of, financial security, but really providing economic security. So I believe in government. I believe that government can do good work. Government is made up of people. And if government doesn't work for the people, government can be changed. And so I reject this notion that government is always problematic. We have to invest in the things that we share and in the things that we value. And I believe, based on the history of this country, that we can continue to do hard things if we believe that we actually have it within us as a country to do that. And I think what we're seeing with young people today is a rising up and saying, we demand better because we deserve better. And I think that's enough to build a future that we can believe in.
No, and for those people who say there's no difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, this is one of those major differences. I mean, I look at the tax cuts and job acts under Trump and this American Rescue Plan. There are very, very stark differences between the two parties, and I look at the responses that you get from conservatives now that the government's the problem, government can't do anything, we don't want any government help, to what you're saying is government's a partner in this because it's us. If we want to do big things, we've got to do it collectively and together. And I don't think that's a difficult pitch to make.
Yeah, I mean, look, what we see happening right now is a divestment from government and a disbelief in government because we keep saying that government can't function. So it ends up being a feedback loop. And
Right.
What I keep continuing to tell people is government can work for you if you elect people that work for you. And if we have fair maps, and yes, there's other ways that we have to sort of wrap that into it, but absolutely. We have to believe that the institutions that we uphold and work in can actually serve people and not profit. And, I think that people are ready to do this. They're tired of, Democrats upholding the status quo. They're tired of us sort of speaking out of both sides of our mouth. And I'd rather do my job and be honest and stand up for working people because they've been standing up for us. I think Wisconsin is ready to go on these issues.
No, good on you. Representative Hong, I want to get your thoughts on how this is going to move through the legislative process because Wisconsin has a Republican legislature. Do you see this getting any support from across the aisle? Because this stuff seems like, it should be bipartisan, should be nonpartisan. How do you see this moving through the process?
To be honest, Rick, I don't know how it's going to move through the process. But as you mentioned before, these are all things that are very hard to say no to. It's very hard for a Republican to have to defend to his constituents why he is against safe housing. Why is he against pollution-free water? Why is he against fair and equitable justice system and self-determination? I think a lot of these things are values that are held by both parties. They just have different narratives in how they support it. And so in terms of moving this across in the legislature, I would hope that this is we continue to use this as a way to communicate with constituents, regardless of who their representative is. This is just something that they deserve. And they have people in the legislature right now that are willing to fight for them to make sure that this is something that everyone can access. And I think whether or not it becomes law, it's incredibly important that this continues to be a piece of legislation that is at the forefront of setting the values and setting, and acts as kind of a down payment and a way for leaders to be held accountable in this legislature. Whether or not it becomes law, that's really up to the speaker and those in the Senate. I would hope that one day it can reach the governor's office if it becomes a bill. But for now, I think it's incredibly important in serving as a way for people to see that there are leaders with a North Star, leaders with values, and leaders who want to fight for you, regardless of if you currently have someone who represents your interests or not.
It sounds like a great organizing tool to get people on board and to hold Republicans' feet to the fire. Last question I've got for each of you. It's the same one. What kind of response are you getting when you talk to your constituents? Let me start with you, Representative Hong. What kind of response have you gotten from people, and have you gotten any negative feedback?
So far, no negative feedback. The constituents that we have spoken with are very excited and are quite hopeful that this is a piece of legislation that they can not only identify with, but again, use as their own organizing tool to continue to get other communities and other folks that they are working with excited about. I think there is so much emotion in politics, and I actually am for that. And for us to be able to communicate that you have allies in the Capitol and we want to continue to work with you, and that advancing this type of agenda only works with an inside-outside strategy. And so the response has been incredibly positive, and we are grateful to have a very engaged district that wants to help us advance this however we can.
Yeah, at the end of the day, government decides who gets what, and deciding that people should have the right to housing and a reasonable job and health care seems to me to be almost a no-brainer. But Representative Shelton, I wanted to get your thoughts on what kind of response you have gotten, and any negative on your side?
No negative. A lot of hope, a lot of energy. When we put out the resolution, we also put out a petition asking folks to join us. Something that I wanted to mention and I forgot to is that we see this as you mentioned, Rika, as an organizing tool. And this is not just at the state level, but this is at the local and local level as well. We're calling on common councils and county boards, school boards, asking them, will you uphold these rights in the lane and in the institutions that you operate in? Calling on activist groups and community organizing groups around the state, from clean water to racial justice groups. We put out a petition asking folks to join us. So over 100 folks have already joined. The next phase of this project is going to be meeting with labor and other groups, asking for their input and asking them to join us on this fight, because we can craft legislation and be movers and shakers in the Capitol, but we also want people to know that we're going to be coming out of our office, standing with them in the streets and in the spaces that they occupy. And again, we want to show up for them just like they show up for us. So there's no telling where this is going to go, but a lot of good energy behind it.
You'll get those comfortable shoes on and get out and march in the streets. Good stuff. Representative Shelton, Representative Hong.
That's right.
Appreciate the time. Anything I can do to help, please let me know. I love the idea of an economic justice bill of rights. Good stuff. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us, Rick.
Appreciate the time. And if you want to take a look at that, we'll get links out on how you can take a look at the plan. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.